Joining me now is Rob Cook. He is the Senior Vice President, Market Development at the Canadian Securities Exchange, CSE. Thanks for coming in, Rob. Good to see you.
Thank you, Mark.
Now, you're going to be on a panel here shortly
Yes.
with our founder, Chad Williams, among others, how small mining and exploration companies can attract institutional and retail investors. We know that it's been a struggle for juniors to raise money the last several years. What's your view currently?
It's still a struggle.
Yep.
Yes, but it can be done. We had a look at some institutional shareholdings of our companies the other day. I got one of our analysts to do it. And he looked at many that were sort of 10 million to, say, 80 million in market cap. And he found that on average, they would have about 15 to 18% institutional holding. And those were usually holdings that are required, because in Canada, you're not required to report unless you've got 10%. So that was somewhat encouraging. But they weren't very large, and they weren't necessarily current, right? They weren't necessarily recent investments. So companies have to do a lot of work to do it, and you can't just hire any old investor relations firm and have them come to you.
Right.
So I mean, the first thing I would tell a company would be get a good project.
Mm-hmm. That would help.
But yeah.
Yeah. A good project for sure, and good management, obviously.
Yes, management's very important.
Yeah. So we've talked to your CEO a few times, Richard Carlton. He sat right there. And he said the last few years, the CSE has been winning the lion's share of new listings in mining. Is that still the case? And if so, how are you doing that?
We're doing that because our reputation just continues to grow. So there's a bit, it's a bit of a snowball effect. I mean, when we started and we were very small, I used to say that there's just two kinds of people in the world, and there's those that like us and those that don't know us yet. And we experienced that a lot, that when people come, and a lot of people in the junior mining industry are associated with more than one company. And once they kind of found it with one, they'd want to do it again. So that's really how we've continued to grow. Of course, we have the lower fees. And we have a somewhat lighter touch in regulation. It's very similar, but we have a bit of a lighter touch. We don't actually have to approve transactions that our listed companies do, although we can object to them if they're offside. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Now, we know that there's been a big shift in how critical minerals are perceived the last several years. What are some of the trends that you're seeing in that area?
Well, the trends are to critical minerals, but a lot of it is bandwagon that isn't necessarily going to yield really good results. I think we saw that in lithium. I think that was fueled by the rapid increase in the price of lithium, and then it was followed by a rapid decline, which was really too bad because we still need to produce more, and we'd like to be producing it in North America as well, right? So, there could be anything. I mean, we've had a couple of companies that are in rare earths that have been attracting a very good following. But, it's still going to be hit or miss depending on the project.
And Rob, do you think currently that the policies unleashed by the White House, which has created all this uncertainty globally, is definitely impacting juniors in terms of being able to raise money, and as far as liquidity, is it hindering or not necessarily?
It's not hindering in a great way. It is to a certain extent. I think it's going to sort itself out. I think people are going to see, we've heard at this conference that, some arms of the U.S. government are investing in this project or that project and, providing funding. So the tap has not been turned off for the mining industry, which is good. But definitely the uncertainty is going to put some people off, but I think it'll work itself out.
Yeah, we are hearing generally that sentiment actually is bipartisan in the States in favor of critical minerals, which is rare to get anything bipartisan.
Right.
And so lastly, back to Richard Carlton, he's commented before that the over-the-counter market has been he used the word phenomenal vehicle for Canadian listed CSE listed companies to also be on the OTC. What are the benefits of doing that for a firm?
Well, the Canadian capital markets, particularly in equities, have a unique association with the United States. So it's very easy even for an American company to go public in Canada and then trade south of the border as what the SEC defines as a foreign private issuer, which makes it a much lighter touch on regulation, and it's also less expensive to go public and list in Canada. But then once there's a quotation on a regulated over-the-counter market in the United States, then it's easier for American investors to access that. Right? It's they can do it through a discount broker. It's not necessarily a high-touch trade. So it's inexpensive for them, and it's accessible. The other thing is that there's market makers on both sides of the border that are keeping the markets in line with the exchange rate. So the ARBs, as we call them, are making that market orderly. So it's worked out very well.
And do you find some of the CSE listed companies that also have a dual listing OTC that are maybe of a fair size and there's a lot of interest in them, is there more volume in the U.S. oftentimes?
Sometimes there is.
Yeah.
A lot of it will depend on where they did their financing. Where's the majority of the dollars that they raised? That tends to shift things. And there can be some instances where actually they're just spending a lot more time telling their story on one side of the border or the other.
Right. That makes sense.
Yeah.
All right, Rob, thanks for dropping by. We appreciate it.
Not at all. But I did want to add that Richard Carlton's not here because he's in Australia, because we just announced that we're going to make an acquisition of the National Stock Exchange of Australia.
Right. We're bearing the lead. I wasn't sure if you wanted to get into that, but that's exciting. Tell us more about it.
Well, as Richard said in one of his interviews, we first looked at it about 15 years ago, but we weren't ready to make an acquisition. They weren't ready either. But now the stars have aligned. And they're very similar, and they're in a marketplace which is similar to what we were in 20 years ago, which lacks competition, particularly at the junior end. So we think that we can grow that market quite a bit. And we've got capital that we can use to deploy to upgrade some of their systems, and it should work out for both of us, really.
It sounds like a good fit, and it gives you a reason to go to Australia every now and then, right?
Right.
All right, thanks, Rob.
Okay, thank you, Mark.
Rob Cook from the CSE.